We have been waiting for future chapters of Deltarune for a long time, so this has kind of left the community with a pile of ideas and theories forming. And one of these strong points of focus has been our fluffy boy, Ralsei. The Prince of the Dark has a lot of unanswered questions, so in this video I'll be analyzing Ralsei and discussing what I think the deal is with our fluffy friend. Now let's briefly talk about Ralsei's design. He's a white fluffy goat resembling Asriel. He has pink horns and glasses with a green hat, sometimes. And he has a green dress, coat, robe, who cares, he rocks it. Ralsei lives in the Castletown Dark World. Dark Worlds are worlds of darkness where objects and places in the real world get turned into lands of fantasy. Now, the Castletown Ralsei resides in is in the supply closet of the school Chris and Susie go to. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Ralsei's Dark World, because I think that's a very important thing to talk about. Ralsei's Dark World is very special, and this is because of the dark fountain that gives the land form. The fountain is made out of pure darkness. It is told by Ralsei that normally Darkners can't go into other worlds and survive there, otherwise they turn to stone, like Lancer and Rule's card did in Chapter 2. This is because each fountain has different darkness, or whatever. However, because Ralsei is made of pure darkness, he can exist in different worlds, and because Ralsei's fountain is pure darkness, other Darkners can exist within Castletown. This is why Castletown is so important, because after we close the Dark Fountains, Castletown is the only real area people can go to survive. However, there's more to talk about with Ralsei's fountain. Ralsei, as far as we know, was the only Darkner who lived inside of the Castletown fountain, which is weird because the other two Dark Worlds we have encountered have been filled with Darkners in different areas. This is a big contrast to the Castletown fountain where we only have Ralsei. Along with this, we haven't actually gotten to explore the fullness of Castletown's Dark World. We got that weird, gloomy area with the chalk and then Castletown, but I'm sure there has to be more than that to the area. Now, along with this, outside of Castletown, in the chalk area, there are walls with black goo on them. One of the images on this wall made of the substance is something that looks eerily similar to the Eyes of the Titan seen in Ralsei's speech in Chapter 2. What does this mean? I'll get back to that in a second, actually. But for a quick little recap first, Ralsei is special because he's made of pure darkness. He was the only person in his Dark World, and he has depictions of the Titans on his Dark World walls. So let's get to theorizing. If Ralsei was the only Darkner created by his Dark World, I wonder if that would make him powerful. Just a small idea, not a lot of evidence to back this one up. I also wonder if the Titans are made of pure darkness, just like Ralsei. There does seem to be a link between Ralsei and the Titans after all. Something to remember is that during the quote-unquote roaring Ralsei tells us about, all Darkners will turn to stone. This makes me think that maybe the Titans actually won't be made of pure darkness, and will be some sort of opposite to pure darkness, or just have their own darkness, and that's why every single other Darkner will end up turning to stone. Another small thing that's worth talking about is that how Ralsei went from Castletown's Dark World to Cyberworlds. This mostly just brings up the question of how. Do the Dark Worlds all exist in some sort of same area and are just separated by long distances, so Ralsei just waddled over? Did Ralsei use some sort of power or ability to make it to Cyberworld? Or maybe something more nefarious? I really don't know, honestly, but that's something we're gonna have to figure out in the future. Anyways, on to another topic I've been excited to talk about, Ralsei's magical abilities. From what we have seen, Ralsei's magic consists of singing to calm down enemies and putting them to sleep. This is actually pretty basic from what we know of. Noelle actually has a stronger version of Ralsei's magic of Sleep Mist. As well as this, Ralsei does not seem to use magic to attack, preferring instead to use his scarf as a weapon. To me, this could mean one of two things. Either Ralsei's nature won't even give you the option to use a magic attack even though he knows some, or Ralsei just doesn't know any damaging magical attacks. You would assume that Ralsei just doesn't know any, but this doesn't sit quite right with me. This makes me wonder if Ralsei will get any stronger magic later on. After all, he is supposed to be the Prince of Darkners. In all, it just kind of bothers me that we know so little about what Ralsei's combat abilities are, especially because he seems to be a very important character to the story. But if Ralsei did have magic, what type of magic would he have? The easiest answer would to say he'd have fire magic because he's a goat, similar to Asgore and Toriel, and even Asriel. But it makes me wonder if maybe he'll have something different. Maybe magic related to darkness, perhaps? Being able to use dark to- no. When I think about it, fire is probably the best bet for that. But anyways, one point that's going to be very important later is I believe that Ralsei knows about the player. So what if Ralsei is just keeping his true magic hidden in order for his magic not to be abused like it was for Noelle? Anyways, just in general makes me wonder what Ralsei will be capable of. I wonder maybe if in Chapter 3 or 4 we'll be able to see more of that. Now this is a topic that's been discussed a lot, but let's talk about what item Ralsei would be in the Light World. After all, in the Light World, Lancer is a playing card, Queen is a computer, and Spamton is supposedly spam emails. So what item would Ralsei be? There are a lot of ideas people have had, but my favorite is the idea that Ralsei was Chris's horned headband when they were a kid. The headband was something Toriel and Asgore bought for Chris because Chris was asking when their horns were going to grow in, assuming that they were a goat just like their family. However, this item was mentioned by Toriel to be gone or lost, not knowing where it was. Now, considering both Chris and Toriel go to the school, I don't think it'd be a stretch to say that the headband could have ended up getting lost. And if it did get lost, it could possibly end up making its way into the supply closet. The headband resembles how Chris wanted to fit in with the Dreamer family, how they wanted to be like Azriel, Toriel, and Asgore and fit in. Now, this would be the perfect item to end up becoming Ralsei. It would, in theory, make Ralsei Chris's persona, but in all reality, the headband is just the best option in my opinion. I mean, it'd be a very good explanation for why Ralsei's a goat. Another thing that adds a lot of credibility to this theory is that the headband that Chris was given was described as being a red horned headband. And something to notice is how Ralsei's horns are pink. This isn't definitive proof, but I mean, it's something that is very, good to take note of. Red and pink, of course, not being too different of colors. But speaking about both Chris and Ralsei, let's go on to the relationship between the two, because the fandom has very mixed views on what these two think of each other. At the start of Chapter 1, Ralsei and Chris have no signs of having any issues. They work together to deal with the Card Kingdom. However, later on in Chapter 2, things seem to get a little bit more complicated. There is the T theory, which should definitely be mentioned. The T theory is created by Fenric. Their video should be on screen right now, in the description, in the comments. Please check out that video. In Chapter 2, you can get Ts matching each character in the party. For example, you can get Ts based off Susie, Noelle, Chris, and Ralsei. And that T heals other party members based on how much they like that person. For example, if Noelle drinks Susie tea, then it maxes out her HP because she really likes Susie. What is important about this is that if you heal Chris with Ralsei's teal, it doesn't heal a lot of HP at all. But if you want to learn more about the T theory, check out Fenric's video. This ties into and explains where the discourse between Chris and Ralsei could have come from. I also think it's worth noting talking about how knowledgeable Ralsei is. I'm going to make a bold statement, as I said earlier, and say that Ralsei knows about us, the player, that we're playing the game. Or he might not know it's a game, but he definitely knows about us. I say this because there is more so three scenes in Deltarune that I feel highly allude to this. In Chapter 1 of Deltarune, there's a scene where Chris and Ralsei are in prison, and we get to view what Susie's doing. During this time, we do not have control of Chris, nor can we see what they are doing. To add on to this, Ralsei tells Chris to imagine what Susie's doing, and then we get taken away from Chris's point of view to see what Susie's doing. However, when we cut back to Chris and Ralsei, we see Ralsei telling Chris, "That's why," before cutting off when Susie enters the room. This is strange because he was talking to Chris, and then we didn't get to see that conversation. This is just strange to me because every time Chris has communicated in the game was through us. So I don't know, it's just very interesting because Chris was told something that we were purposely not supposed to know about, or that's what it seems like. This makes me feel like Ralsei was distracting the player so they could talk to Chris independently, explaining something to Chris, possibly why they have to be controlled by the player, or more about the prophecy. Now, you think this might be a bit too far, but we have more evidence to back this up in Chapter 2. During Chapter 2, whoop-de-doo, the same thing happens. Ralsei tells us to think about what Susie's doing, and we proceed to see what Susie is doing. Now, this, of course, by itself, so what, same as Chapter 1. However, the real juicy stuff is during the Snowgrave route. Susie goes to check on Noelle, and Ralsei prompts us to think about what she is doing. Nothing happens, though, and we stay focused on what Chris is doing. Ralsei seems to get antsy, waiting for something to happen. Then, after a short time skip, Susie exits the room, and Ralsei proclaims that something was supposed to happen. However, he quickly reclaims his composure. Overall, this makes me feel like Ralsei knows about us. During Chapter 1, Ralsei talked to Chris independently of us, and during Chapter 2, Ralsei seemed annoyed that our point of view didn't get shifted away from Chris. Now, my next idea is kind of way out there in fan theory Lula land, and so I'm going to be blaming Kazmoment on this.
Hey!
Kazmoment's one of my friends, and he helped me kind of put this theory together. So, I'll get started with that one. Let's say we go off of the idea that Ralsei knows about the player. After the Spamton Neo fight, Chris seems in a stage of distress, and the entire party member seems to be in a bit more of a down mood. Susie and Ralsei try to comfort them, however, Ralsei does something I see personally as out of character. Ralsei is a very, very caring monster who loves their friends and would comfort them if anything happened. However, when Susie tried to mention how weird Spamton was, with strings, talking about being controlled and all of that mess, Ralsei seems to just try to sweep it under the rug. He proclaims that Spamton was nothing more than a busted program, and that they shouldn't worry about it. Ralsei does not immediately try to comfort Chris or figure out what the problem was. Think about this, Ralsei is the Prince of Darkners. It is his job to help save Darkners and to just make sure that people are doing okay. That's what his goal is. However, when Spamton goes through this crazy mess, Ralsei just tries to get everyone to forget about it. I feel like this is something that if you were Ralsei, you'd want to look into, figure it out. This is very odd, I believe. What if Ralsei knows more than he wants us to think? What if Ralsei already knows about the story of Deltarune, the script of the game, if you want to call it, and that's why he does what he does? To try to follow this script to make sure that everything turns out okay. This idea isn't perfect and definitely has its flaws, but that's the fun of theorizing. If Ralsei, like, okay, let's look at this. Let's just look at Ralsei for a second. I'm going to say everything weird about Ralsei. Ralsei knows about the prophecy, the roaring, possibly the player themselves, is made of pure darkness, the only one alive in their dark world as far as we know, and he tries to sweep the whole Spamton stuff under the rug. This doesn't help that on the old Deltarune website there was the prophecy that Ralsei tells us, written in Wingdings. Remember the prophecy of hope and light, of the Lightners? Yeah, that was in Wingdings, in like the Deltarune website in 2016, a year after Undertale came out. This, of course, links Ralsei to the ever-mysterious Dr. Gaster. There's just so much more pointing towards Ralsei knowing more than he wants anyone to know about. Whether he's trying to follow a script to make sure everything turns out well, or just wants to hide the truth, we'll have to figure that out later. However, that's not the end of the video. There's another quick thing I wanted to talk about. That last segment got pretty heated towards Ralsei's, pointing fingers. So here's something that I very heavily believe in. I don't think Ralsei's a villain. I don't think Ralsei will ever be a villain, a twist villain, nothing. Even if everything I said was true about knowing about the scripts, the players, everything, I still think Ralsei is a good character, is a good guy in the story. And let's start off with Ralsei's personality. He's extremely nice and caring. He made rooms for Chris, Susie, Lancer, and Queen in the castle before even renovating his own. He makes Susie food and always tries to root for his friends, wanting the best for Susie and Lancer even when on opposing sides, and even went as far as to heal King during their fight. I don't think any of that is fake or a facade of any sort. People like mentioning on how Ralsei didn't talk about the roaring until the last minute, and how he must be hiding stuff, and that's suspicious. And you know what? Ralsei is hiding stuff, and I think that's nearly just a fact. However, I believe that he's probably doing this for a very good reason. Maybe it's to keep knowledge hidden from the player, or maybe Ralsei thought that the roaring was such common knowledge that everyone should have known about it. He does seem shocked when Queen said that she didn't know about it, and very surprised at Birdley for even trying to, make a dark fountain. Along with this, Ralsei already told Susie and Chris that they needed to seal dark fountains, so he most likely didn't think he needed to bother explaining why it was such a bad thing to open dark fountains, when he made a big point that that was their entire goal as heroes. So if Ralsei is withholding knowledge from us, it's highly likely that we just don't need that knowledge yet, and so he's not going to waste time telling us it if the information is not useful to us. Along with this, if the prophecy is true, then Ralsei will be with us to the very end, which makes it likely he isn't a twisted villain. If Ralsei ever does go against us, then I'm sure his reason is extremely good. Perhaps during a weird route, or in the case where Susie and Chris enjoy their adventures too much and want to make more dark fountains. I can imagine it being a scenario where Ralsei would be like Sans or Undyne, where even though you're fighting him and he's going against you, he's the hero in that scenario. Oh, I'm out of breath. I was the Yapathon. Wow, I've been rambling for a while. I'll try to keep this ending short. I hope you all enjoyed my mix of analysis and theorizing. Make sure to check out both Fenric and Casmo in the description below. I hope I conveyed all my thoughts well, and possibly brought up some ideas that you guys never thought of before. Anyways, that'll be all for today. Thank you for listening to me. I'll see you guys next time.